Hey everyone, what's up? Tryanus here. Today we've got another Mist of Pandaria video for you, but this time we're going to be doing something a little different. We are not going to be doing anything that deals with PvP. Right now we are going to go ahead and I'm going to be showing you guys the strategy as well as just the walkthrough to the heroic mode of Gate of the Setting Sun. Now this is one of the more difficult heroics that I've dealt with in my life. It took quite a few tries for a few of the bosses. Some of them were pretty much tank and spank and, one shot, one kill sort of deal. But the first and the last boss took a few tries to get used to. Now, normally I don't spend more than about a half hour in a single dungeon learning, I don't spend more than a half hour, exactly, because they're easy. They're normally just tank and spank. You learn them real quick. You learn what you got to do, and then you kill them. Maybe you'll wipe once. But this one took a little more try because there's a little bit more mechanic and strategy needed within these bosses. So when each boss comes around, I'm going to go ahead and explain what these strategies are. For the most part, this is coming from a DPS perspective. On the final boss, I will be giving you the perspective of a DPS, but I'm going to tell healers and tanks what is the easiest and the best method that I have learned when it comes to defeating him, the last boss. And I'll do that here and there through the fights, but remember, this is all coming from a DPS perspective, and I might do some tanking perspectives, in a couple of videos later down the road, but for now, this is all from my mage, who is a level 90. I am currently gearing up my heroic gear, and it has been a lot of fun. These heroics, there are some that are real easy and it's just like, face roll, real simple, but then there are others that, like I said, are a little bit more difficult, like this boss or like this dungeon. Now we have 4 bosses today. We have the first boss, which I consider I call him Saboteur. Then we have our second boss, which I call him Striker. Then we have the third boss, which is Commander, and then the fourth boss, which is the most difficult boss, Rygon. This dungeon is definitely fun because I like dungeons that are a little bit more, they require mechanics, they require a little bit of a strategy to figure out what you're going to do. Now, as you guys can see, I do skip through because we did wipe a couple of times when this happened, and so I went ahead and, allowed that to be the case because I didn't want, I didn't want you guys to watch me wipe because of all the wipes we had. It took me about an hour and 10 minutes to be in this dungeon. It was about an hour and 10 minutes long because of it. And unfortunately, it sucked. But, there's nothing you can really do about that in that case. So I went ahead and just took out the footage of us wiping so that way I could give you the footage of us downing and how to properly do it. So for this first boss, you've got a couple of mechanics that you need to learn. He is a Saboteur, which, if to those of you who don't know, he likes blowing shit up. So what he does is I believe it's every like 10 seconds, he throws down bombs onto these ground. Now, as you should in any scenario, avoid the bombs. Don't get in their path. Now, it's not that difficult due to the fact that the bombs don't like explode in an AoE situation. The bombs, when they blow up, yes, they do have a small AoE, but they blow up and they send a line of fire in the Y and X axis. So imagine a perpendicular line, like, across, and the bombs going in those directions, left and right and up and down. There is no diagonal or semi-diagonal or 45-degree angle or any of that crap. So it's pretty easy to avoid them as long as you're paying attention. And the one problem, though, is that depending on where he places the bombs and all that kind of stuff, the bombs, when the line of fire does hit another bomb, as it would in a real-life situation, the bomb is going to explode that one, and then that one. And it's a large chain of fire. And it's not that difficult because you just pay attention, don't tunnel vision, don't just focus on the boss. Pay attention to your surroundings, and it's not that difficult. The only difficult part is when the boss uses one of his skills called Sabotage. And this blows up all of the bombs in a large, or pretty much every bomb that's on the ground, he blows them all up. And as you can see right here, he's blowing them all up. Now, they're not that difficult to avoid. It is a little bit harder for the healer, so healer, make sure, if you've got a big AoE heal, obviously you want to pull that up. Make sure that you are focused on that, because otherwise the chances of a player dying is pretty easy. And that's all there is to this fight. It's just avoiding the bombs, and when sabotage happens, just healers, keep an eye on your party members, because it is going to be a little healer unfriendly, if you will. On the beta, it's a little more difficult because we do not have add-ons, and a lot of healers I've learned do use add-ons, whether it's Healbot, Grid, Helium, whatever. So it's a little bit easier to use your AoEs then, but it's still possible. Just keybind one of your AoEs, like this Druid pop Tranquility, who is our healer in this. And that's the perfect situation to use something like that. And one last thing for this fight is that the tank, please make sure that you are tanking the boss in the corner of the room, because it's easier, because the more you move him around, I hear, or the tank, I believe it's like harder for him to, it's just, the tank said it was easier, and it seemed to be easier. We tried it a couple of different ways, and then we finally just realized, okay, we're just going to pull him into the corner, and we're going to burst him down. Now, our shaman popped heroism, and that's okay, but personally, I've always found that popping heroism, the only time I ever do that is if it's like seriously needed on a boss, like after you've wiped a couple of times, and you realize, okay, this isn't going to work without heroism. Well, then yeah, that's fine, but otherwise, it's not really needed. I normally save heroism, or, well, for me, it's time warp. I save that till the end, till the final boss, when, obviously it's going to be the most difficult. But, hey, whatever floats your boat, to each their own. It doesn't really matter, because by the time you get to the final boss, your heroism's going to be up. It'll be gone depending on, I guess which boss you use it, or when you use it, or whatever. But this, the bosses in this dungeon pretty much all have the same mechanics. All of them like to throw shit at you, or throw shit on the ground, or something. So most of the fights in this dungeon are tank and spank. There really isn't much other than that. They're all tank and spank, avoid shit on the ground. But a couple of them do have a little bit more mechanics, and you'll see me go through that. But while you guys watch, we're getting rid of all these ads and bullshit, I'm gonna go ahead. Recently, we have discovered that for those of you who are on the beta and do PvP, they've recently set up vendors for PvP gear. Now, it doesn't have the new Season 12 PvP model, but it's, it looks like Ruthless, but it's still the same stats and everything. The Malevolent, or I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it's Malevolent. Well, those are all the stats and everything like that. So, if you need to know how to get there, whatever, let me know. I can show you. I'm going to put out some awesome PvP videos using that gear. Excuse me. And you guys are going to be able to watch me own it up. Now, I do not recommend using these PvP gear in Heroics. In one of the videos that I just recently recorded, and I will be uploading it soon, you will realize that as high as your burst damage is, it doesn't, it counteracts, because heroic gear, you can get hit. You need hit in PvE. In PvP, you don't need hit. All you need is to get hit capped for that capped level, so it'd be level 90. And once you do that, you take all the other stats that you don't need very much of and reforge them into your top secondary stats, like I would do. Like for me, since I'm a fire mage, I do crit. But you can't really do that with PvP gear, because it would just require way too much. And on PvE gear, it's easier, because some already have the... Sorry, my dog is barking. He won't shut up. It's easier because there's already gear. A lot of the gear already has hit. Sam, shut up. So I do not recommend it. I mean, I've seen healers do it, and I guess that's okay, healers. But if you're DPS or a tank, I do not recommend it, because you need that hit. You need to be hit capped. Otherwise, you're going to be missing, and you're going to lose a lot of your DPS. I tried it in one of the dungeons, and I mean, it was okay. I like seeing the big numbers, but then I realized it's not as viable as using PvE gear. Sam, shut up. And so Now we have come along to the second boss, which I call Striker. I don't really remember their full names, but this boss is pretty much a tank and spank, just like any other boss. Um, the only things that there's only two mechanics you need to know. One is avoid the shit on the ground, just like you would on any other boss. If you see shit on the ground, avoid it. It's as simple as that. You avoid it because otherwise you're gonna die. And when I'm tanking dungeons, I don't put up with that shit. Like, if you see something on the ground and you're losing health, pay the fuck attention and get out of it. It aggravates the crap out of me because, I mean, how stupid can you be? It's one thing if, it's the first time doing it or whatever, but we normally tell people, or I normally tell people, okay, stay out of this shit on the ground. And when they don't and I'm tanking it, I'm just like, okay, whatever, and it ticks me off and I'll let them die because I don't put up with that shit. Pay the fuck attention. It's as simple as that. So for this boss, obviously stay out of the green shit on the ground. And then he does have a skill. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but he summons a horizontal line of fire across the middle, and then he summons adds. So the tank, obviously, you want to run across and pick up the adds while this happens, and we burst down the adds, and then also you want to burst down the boss while this happens. It's a very easy fight. It's just, avoid the fire. That's all there is to it. You need to learn to avoid the fire, and then once that happens, you can kind of ignore the adds and just focus on the boss. That's what I didn't do, but I should have done because it would have just saved so much time. If the DPS just switched over to the tank or over to the boss, it would save so much time. So when that happens, tank, you can pick up the adds and kind of focus them down, but DPS, just hop back on the boss. At least if you're range, hop back on the boss and just burst him down. So that way, you're saving yourself, a minute or two or whatever. And that's all there is to the fight. It's rinse and repeat. He throws green shit on the ground. He throws the fire on the ground. Stay the fuck out of it, and the boss will go down with no trouble as long as you've got the proper DPS. In the beta, most of the players were pretty much geared the same, so DPS was, just like it would in Cataclysm Heroics. They're suited for the amount of gear that you're supposed to have. And the beta, one of the few things I regret with a mage is that DPS queues suck. On live, they don't suck so much right now because a lot of people are farming, Hour of Twilight Heroics and shit. But on this beta, Battleground and Heroic queues fucking suck. You're waiting and waiting and waiting. I was in a queue for like 2.5 hours the other day, and I was just like, oh my god. I almost like fell asleep just staring at the computer doing nothing. And it's one of the few reasons I wish I leveled my tank up to 90, and I'm just too lazy to do that, you guys. It does take quite a few hours played to level up your character to 90, so I got too lazy. And my main is my mage anyway, so I figured I'd level him up to 90 and then test all the content out with him. But recently, with Jade Forest being put under maintenance, which is the first leveling zone from 85 to 86, that recently went under maintenance, and they pulled up, I guess you could call it a teleporter in Stormwind and I guess in Orgrimmar, I don't know. And when you click on him, you get a quest, and then he teleports you to Valley of the Four Winds, and from there, you automatically level up to 86, and you also get pre-gear, like gear to get you geared up for that, I guess you could say, situation or scenario or whatever. Because obviously they want you to continue testing content, but Jade Force is under maintenance right now, and they don't want to afford, losing people because of that or whatever. So, it's fun. The content is amazing, you guys. Scenery, they put a lot of work into it. A lot of people I've heard, a lot of guild mates on my guild on live aren't really looking forward to Mr. Pandaria because, they're tired of it. They feel that it's getting too easy or whatever. But personally, I love it. I am looking forward to it. I'm definitely looking forward to the raids. I know I'm looking forward to PvP. Oh god, it's going to be so much fun. Fire mages are still as fun as could be. They did not change up the rotation very much, as to those of you who saw in my previous video. So I'm looking forward to it. The raids look awesome. I haven't tested out all the heroics, but the ones that I have tried out, you guys will see those footage, or that footage, but it's going to be pretty awesome. And, I think the one thing that I'm looking forward to is monk healing. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have watched videos on monk healing, but monk healing is the most overpowered healing right now in Mr. Pandaria. I don't know if it's a bug on the beta, but I had a tank. No. Yeah, I had a tank and a healer solo a boss from 75%, all because the monk never ran out of mana. And their healing is just way too OP, but I love it. So, I have a feeling a lot of people are going to switch over to monk healing. And DPS monks, which I've, because I've dueled monks and things like that, they've got, a lot of stuns and a lot of slows. So I have a feeling you're going to see a lot of monks. Excuse me. There's going to be a lot of monks in Mr. Pandaria, I feel. But, we'll see, obviously, when it comes out. A lot of people really aren't too keen on some of the changes that are getting, like, the classes are getting. I was reading some blue posts, and apparently Blizzard, balanced out Rogue's, play style or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, enough rambling. Let's go ahead and get onto this boss. Now, this is the third boss out of four in the dungeon. This is Commander. Now, he is just tank and spank. He is, one of the easiest bosses. All you got to do is avoid the ground shit. And the tanks, all I recommend is just picking up the ads from the DPS because, they don't do much damage. It's easier on the DPS, so we don't have to continue moving or anything like that. So tanks, just make sure that, when that happens, just pick up the ads for me, or for the DPS, not me specifically, but for any DPS, just pick up the ads while we continue to burst down the boss. As you saw, the tank did start at the bottom and pulled the boss up while we DPS'd him down. That was for the simple reason that he throws shit down as he walks up. And by the time, as long as you've got the proper DPS, by the time you get him up here, up to where we are, the boss, excuse me, the boss should either be dead or damn near dead. And then that's when you just focus him down and you ignore the ads. So, like I said, the bosses in this mechanic, in this dungeon, are very, they're very simplistic. They're all the same, except for, the first and the last bosses where there's a little more to it. The other two, Striker and the Commander, they both have the same mechanics. Avoid the shit on the ground, tank and spank, pick up the ads. That's all there is to it. Now, this final boss is a little bit more difficult. It took us about 45 minutes well, no, I can't say that. It took us about 30 minutes to defeat this boss, due to the simple fact that we wiped like 10 times, figuratively speaking, and it was just a bitch, because you have to learn how to properly defeat him, and what you need to do, because there's a lot to it. So that's why that's why I created this video, to show you guys, how I defeated him, and what's the best method that I've learned, because we've tried multiple methods, and only this last one that I'm going to show you is the most effective. He has quite a few skills, but there's only a couple that DPS really need to worry about. And the first one is that when the boss is summoned, you see these cannons on the left side of my screen. You need to climb into those and shoot yourself up onto the boss and burst down the weak spot. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Now what happens is when this weak spot is defeated, it's going to break his outer shell, and then that's when you burst down the boss. He is a giant fucking bug. He's not that hard to miss. You know, he's easy to focus. So all DPS, all 3 DPS, need to make sure that they are climbing into these cannons and jumping onto the boss. Now luckily for me, I got bugged a little bit in this fight, so it saved us a little time, but as long as all 3 DPS are rinse and repeating until the weak spot is down, it is, you know, rinse and repeat, and it's gonna stay rinse and repeat till, you know, until he's dead, or at least till the outer shell is gone. So all I recommend is DPS, obviously get in the cannons, like I've said probably 3 times already. Tank, you need to make sure that you stay on the ground and pick up the adds, because there's going to be quite a few adds that are summoned throughout this boss fight. So all you need to do is pick up the adds, kind of tank them around while the boss follows you around. But the boss isn't going to follow you around because it's going to be focused on us. Now what'll happen when the DPS climb onto, or hop on top and are DPSing the weak spot down, is he's going to back up and then he's going to ram himself into the wall, and that's going to throw the DPS off. And then you just rinse and repeat. Climb back in the cannon, burst down the weak spot, and then, then you kill the boss. Now the healer wants to stay on the ground with the tank because the tank does summon adds, or not the tank, the boss does summon adds that put a debuff onto your DPS or tank or healer himself. And it's a swarm, and it's dispellable. So all you gotta do is, healer, just make sure you're dispelling this when it pops up, because it can kill your DPS. It hits pretty hard because it ticks every like 1 second for I think it was like 15k or something like that. So that's, healers, just make sure that you are dispelling when needed. And as you can see right now, this is what I was talking about, the weak spot. When you hop onto the boss, you're going to have just this one little thing you have to attack. You just burst this down. And, luckily I got bugged, but that's probably not going to happen. So it'll probably take either 3 or 4 jumps, depending on your DPS in your party. And you defeat the weak spot, and once that happens, you will break his carcass open, and then that's the time when you pop all your cooldowns. I'm talking tank, and all 3 DPS need to pop their cooldowns and burst him down. Because if that's not taken care of, it is likelihood that you will die. Because the boss hits hard, and the boss fixates onto one of your party members, and when that happens, the party members gain 45% movement speed, and they kind of want to run around, but not too far from the healer, because the healer needs to make sure that they can keep you up. So now that the weak spot is down, we have popped Time Warp, I have popped my cooldowns, and we are getting ready to burst him down. Now you also want to avoid the shit on the ground. You have whirlwinds, and then you have little black stuff on the ground that the adds summon, but it's not worth focusing down the adds because the boss is more important. If the boss doesn't take it down within a certain amount of time, the likelihood of your healer running out of mana and your tank dying are pretty much 100%, because there's just too much going on, and you kind of need to stay together because you don't want to get out of the range of your healer while this is going on. So just focus on your boss, and once he's dead, dungeon's over. Obviously, like I said, there's a lot more mechanics to this boss, you guys. But it's pretty simple because of this video. Hopefully this helped you, and that pretty much wraps this video up, you guys. So I will see you next time for the next heroic. See ya.